if you cut Dez Fitzpatrick, you have to cut him first before you can let him clear waivers and then sign him to the practice squad. Can a 4th-round draft pick at wide receiver clear waivers? That's tough.
Can you cut a 4th-round wide receiver?
And look, it was just the first preseason game. There's still 3+ weeks before game week of week 1.
Yeah.
There's plenty of time for Dez Fitzpatrick to get his stuff together to make this team. But as of right now, you cannot keep Dez Fitzpatrick over really any of those guys not named Fred Brown.
Yeah. And it's an interesting conversation, and we'll get into this when we talk about my 53-man roster. But it's very easy to sit around and be like, well, you can only keep 6 receivers, you can only keep 7. But really, like, if you're not taking away from another position, you can keep more at one position. So we'll get into that more later and how the numbers work out. But simply on the surface, asking the question, is Dez Fitzpatrick purely based on his talent on August 16th, 2021 worthy of being on an NFL roster? The answer to that question is no.
Well, and I don't know if you can say based on his talent. I think he's got plenty of talent. I just don't think he's
seen any of it.
Well, I just don't think he's put it together yet. Like he's behind, and my tweet kind of got things rolling on this when I noticed that they had played 8 wide receivers before Dez Fitzpatrick got a snap. Guys like Fred Brown, Mason,
including
Kinsey,
your 6th-round draft pick.
Yeah, Racing McMath was out. It wasn't like they were holding back rookies because Racing McMath was out there fairly early. But 8 receivers got to play before Dez Fitzpatrick. And was it a message to Dez Fitzpatrick?
He's the 9th best receiver on the team, probably.
Yeah, but and Ed says, who cares? Cut him. Like that's a big admitting to a failure of a draft pick by John Robinson if he cuts Dez Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, he traded up for, no less.
Yeah. After we were all complaining about how they did not draft a wide receiver pre-Julio Jones trade. And here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing, Luke. They didn't just play 8 wide receivers before Dez Fitzpatrick. They played 8 wide receivers where 2 of them were not A.J. Brown and Julio Jones.
That's a good point. I wouldn't even
Dez
think about
Fitzpatrick, in that terms, 11th.
I mean, quickly, the receivers on this roster that are better than Dez: Julio, A.J., Josh Reynolds, Racey McMath, Nick Westbrook-Akina, Chester Rogers, Marcus Johnson. Let's see. Who's left?
Mason Kinsey.
Mason Kinsey is better than Dez
Cam
Fitzpatrick.
Batson.
Cam Batson is better than Dez Fitzpatrick. That leaves him at 10 at best.
Fred Brown. Fred Brown's the only arguable.
Yeah. I'd take my boy Dez over ball on the ground Brown.
Yeah, with Fred Brown, he is what he is, right?
Dez Fitzpatrick. Utter lack of sideline awareness on that pass. Oh, gosh.
But it's crazy. Like that Dez Fitzpatrick, they're telling you guys and everybody, they're telling us that he's their 11th wide receiver at this point. 4th-round draft pick.
And he is. Like, that's not some sort of we kind of knew that going into the game, no?
Yes. And G-Man asks, does he have any special teams ability to help keep him? No, not really.
No.
Like the only reason why Dez Fitzpatrick has a chance to make the roster is because where he was drafted. Yep. And Mike Vrabel will always tell you, we don't care where people were drafted.
Well, let me say
but John Robinson does.
Because I think Mike is correct in saying that, but where you were drafted is a reflection of your talent and your potential. It's not simply we're going to keep the higher draft picks to make ourselves look better. This is not the Colts holding on to Trent Richardson for far too long because they traded a high pick for him. Dez Fitzpatrick was a 4th-round pick because of his potential. Now, you could argue, because there were several analysts who didn't see him as a 4th-round draft pick and thought it was odd that they took him that highly, but clearly they saw him as that. They see him as someone with a lot of potential. And so that's why we say, and why everyone says you can't cut a 4th-round draft pick. It's because that is a reflection directly of their potential. It's not because of a status or anything like that.
Yeah.